Hi, welcome to another episode of Through the Process. And I'm really excited today to be speaking with my friend Vergi Rodriguez. She is a writer, director, advocate, woman of many hats and talents. And today we're going to be chatting about the making of the short film Dreamer that she wrote, co-directed, and starred in. So I'm excited to dive in and get started. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Of course. Well, hi, Kate. Thank you for having me. I'm like really excited about this. I love this. I love this series here. So yeah, just you kind of did a good intro there. Yeah, I decided to do a short film on Dreamer and during COVID, had started to submit it to some festivals, and it's taken me to the point where I'm going to Cannes this weekend. So we got accepted to the diversity in Cannes portion of the Cannes Film Festival, and I'm just really, really excited about it.
I know, I'm so excited for you. At the minute you posted on Instagram and said like, we're going to Cannes, I was like, okay, I need to reach out. We need to chat. We need to talk about this film and get it out there. I want to know for everyone, like, how did you, okay, let's tell people a little bit about you first. I want to, tell them how you get started in the arts, like what led you to get inspired to get into filmmaking and writing, all of that good stuff.
Sure. So it started one sunny day back in Queens, New York, back in the day. I always was driving my mother crazy in the apartment, dancing and just like, I just had a lot of energy, and I was a tomboy for a while there. And she took me to an agent. They had like an open call or something and like photo shoots and stuff. And, he was like, does she like a hobby? Is there something she likes sports? She's like, I don't know. She just dances around the house the whole time. And he's like, you should put her in dance class. And she was like, never thought. And I was like, oh yeah, it sounds like fun. And so, I was hooked. She enrolled me in this, it was called Harlem Children's Theater. And we actually did off-Broadway shows. It was a children's theater, but we did shows on off-Broadway. So that was like my first experience on stage. And they did like kind of like a remix version of like Mary Had a Little Lamb and like fairy tales and stuff like that. So that was really fun and I enjoyed that. And from there, I just started to get enrolled in like different dance schools locally.
Mhm.
And through that and through my training, I was the kind of kid, my mom was not a stage mom. I was the kid that would wake up on Saturday morning at 7 and be like, I have class at 9. So can we get going? And, for living in New York City at the time, it's like, it could take you an hour just to get into the city. We were in Queens, so it would take us an hour to just get into the city. So my mom was like, I don't know who this child is. Like, whose child is this? Like, I love it, but like, really, it's Saturday. I want to sleep in. And I'm like, yeah, sorry, I have class. And so
Dedication. That's how I used to be when I was like doing like anything that I loved when I was growing up. And I would recruit people and they'd think I was all nuts. They're like, we're not waking up at 6 a.m. to go meet to do this like film. But yeah, no, I totally get it.
So so then basically kind of fast forward to high school. I went to the Performing Arts High School in New York City, LaGuardia, that is based off of the film Fame. I studied dance. I got in for dance. I was actually really nervous. I thought I wasn't going to make any friends, and I totally made friends. And after that, I think it was like right out of high school, I got like my first professional job, again, working with like more local artists in New York City. Music videos started to be really big. So, or were already kind of pretty big. So I just started working with, moved me all the way up to working with Puffy. And we were rehearsing, or Diddy, we were rehearsing for, he was going to do a BIG tribute on the MTV Awards. And so I was rehearsing for that. I had just auditioned for something for Prince. And at my audition for Prince, it was kind of, they overlap sometimes. And I was in rehearsals for Puffy already. I got the call for Prince, and they're like, Prince wants you to come to Paisley tomorrow. And I was like, huh? Prince who? Like Purple Rain? You mean? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, oh, right, I can't. I'm on another gig. Like I don't like to do that. It's just not, it wasn't professional for me. I didn't feel, and I don't like to take a job and then be like, sorry, because that's somebody else that could have had that slot. At least that's the way I look at it. So they were like, all right, well, it was like Monday. They're like, you need to be there Tuesday. I was like, that's not, and you need to pack for 4 months. And I was like, what? 4 months. What do you mean? What? Like, huh? And it was just so overwhelming, everything at the same time, that I was just like, you need to give me 2-3 days. I can't make this tomorrow morning on a flight. So basically the next day I called, I canceled out of that MTV job, puffy job. And like 2 days later, I was on a plane to Minnesota and ended up at Paisley Park. And the rest is kind of history, because it was really, I feel like that was the point for my dance career that I shifted. Everything shifted for me, because that's the job that brought me out to Los Angeles. That's the job that kind of, to this day, you know, people are like, wow, you worked with Prince. So through that process, I mean, I'm kind of getting long-winded here, but, you know, worked on a ton of music videos, worked on a bunch of tours, commercials, etc. I kind of got sick of being on the road and dancing, and I wanted to do something else. I went back to school. I went to graduate school. I studied psychology and took a break from the industry for a while. And coming out of that, I went to, I was like, I want to get back in the industry, because of course you miss it. And as much, at least for me, I started to miss it. I got back into comedy. I wanted to do something fun. So I went to UCB and started taking improv. And I loved it. That led me to screenwriting and writing sketches. And then I signed up at UCLA. They had a great screenwriting program, the extension program.
And that's I think that's how you met Jared, right?
Jared and Vanessa, a couple of folks in our writing group. Yeah. And so then that's where I got the idea, because from a previous administration, I was still auditioning like as an actor and going out for stuff. And just the stuff that was coming through was really frustrating, because it was still, for at least for a Hispanic woman, it was like, well, here's another maid thing. And I was like, or here's a Lolita, or here's like a prostitute, you know? And I was like, who's writing this? You know what I mean? And since I had just started writing, I was like, well, okay, what if I just write something myself? And I've had, you know, in between all of this, I dipped and dabbled a little bit in music and put out some music videos, you know, that I thought I was so cool, was doing music. And then I was like, yeah, this isn't for me.
I didn't know you did music. I need to see these. I need to hear this.
Dug a hole for myself right there, but yeah. And so I shot my own music videos. Again, it was just stuff. I was just trying to always stay creative. I've always found a way to just stay creative. If I'm like, ooh, let's shoot a music video, I just go do it. I don't wait for permission for anybody to give me. I just accept it myself and just go do it. And I think that that's what happened with this. When I got really pissed off at something my agent sent me, it wasn't their fault by any means. I'm not blaming them. It just was showing me the work that was coming through. And this was big, representation matters and diversity and Oscar So White, all of that stuff was happening. And I was like, I gotta write something. This is not who the Hispanic community is. Like, if we want to tell our stories, we need to tell them. And that doesn't matter. We have no excuse anymore to be like, I can't shoot it. Yeah, you can. You have a phone. Like, you can shoot something on your phone at this point,
I'm sure they're making like full-length feature films using iPhones these days. I mean, it's incredible what we can do on our own, and the way it's opened up. And I think you hit the nail right on the head. It's, I, back in the day when I was doing acting too, like I will never forget this one commercial audition that I went to, and I totally butchered it. Like last minute you go in and they change, like you've memorized all the lines and then they change, like, oh, can you read off the sheet? We've changed the lines. And I was just, so green and new at everything. I just, it was for a chicken strip commercial, and it was like for another mom role. Like I was always getting like the friend or the mom. I was always the mom or the girl next door.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I had a good friend, like one of my roommates when I lived in Toronto, she's like a really good looking woman, and she was always getting like hot chick, or I think one of her roles was like Puck Bunny or something like that. So she was always getting typecast in those. And she's this like incredibly talented, like, versatile, writer, actress, singer, comedian, all of that. So you hit it right on the head, saying like, you need to just those auditions and those crappy roles, just like write your own stuff.
Again, I think as a dancer, that's where I was telling you earlier before we started, like my dance career has helped me a lot in a lot of ways. Because I've been exposed to these top tier artists, and celebrity artists, because they're like machines, right? So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes as a dancer that we're exposed to, not only just in like rehearsals, but just being around them and all the other stuff that goes on, and being on sets with them. I learned a lot. I didn't even realize it, like through osmosis, kind of just watching, how a DP would work, lighting, the directors, I just took it all in. And sometimes I didn't really realize I was even doing that. But, even some of those directors that I've worked with, they're all shooting stuff now. Like Francis Lawrence shot the Slave video for Britney Spears, which I danced in, and then he did Hunger Games. You know what I mean? So I'm like, these are guys and gals that know what they're doing, but they used each thing, I guess, as a platform, which is kind of how I look at this. It's the same thing. It's like, well, I didn't really even realize how much my dance career has led me to where I am right now, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here, right? So I think I just took kind of that power, so to speak, into my own hands, wanted to tell this story, especially, I think it was also in response to what our previous president was saying about immigrants crossing the border. All of that led to all of like, how can I express this? Because I'm so angry. I'm just so angry. I don't know how else to say what I need to say, because that's so inaccurate, right? And so I used art as the form to do that.
I think a lot of us do. Speaking of that, did you want to tell us a little bit about, like you just touched on it, but did you want to tell us a little bit about what the film is about and what inspired it?
Yeah, so the film Dreamer is about a DACA recipient that comes back from a medical volunteer mission in Venezuela. And when she gets to the TSA agent, desk, there's like a glitch in the system, so to speak. And that kind of throws her into this spiral of, oh my God, she might get deported. And as we know, DACA recipients and dreamers in this country, a lot of them came over as kids. It wasn't a choice. It wasn't like them just crossing the border randomly. They were brought here by their parents or by their family members as children. But I think there's this misconception around them, because I feel like, oh, they're just these immigrants. It's like they give back so much to society. They give back so much. A lot of them are doctors and lawyers, and even if they're not, then they give back to society. They are working citizens here. And pay their.
So sorry, as a Canadian, I did do a little bit of research on DACA. It's the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. Did you want to just, like, in your own words, like just give a quick description of what that is, and that will give a little bit of a deeper background into.
Sure. And again, I'm by no means an expert.
No, but you know more than me. My
whole point on making this short film was to start a conversation, which obviously we're having. So that was the whole point of doing the short, right? Because I'm in no way involved in politics or anything. I'm just an artist trying to tell a story. But
powerful. Art is powerful.
Yeah. So dreamers and DACA recipients, there was an act put in place by Obama to protect them from being deported. But in a lot of ways, like we saw in our previous administration, if they felt like implementing an ICE, patrol or whatever, and if they have some sort of little something on their record of, not even a big criminal, right? Like nothing like that, they could potentially be deported. There's nothing in place to protect them, to keep them here. I mean, there is, but there isn't. Like I said, if there's another president that comes into power and decides to kind of just like, let's just deport them. I'm making it easier, sounding it easier than it is, but that's basically where we're at. That they're protected, but they're not.
That's why I think more people really need to wake up and get more involved in advocacy work and just speaking up about rights, because all it takes is one person or a small group of people to come in and just, breed corrupt, I was gonna say, it takes one corrupt individual to come in and take people's rights away. And, as people and citizens of countries, like me in Canada, obviously I'm not a citizen of the United States, but we need to speak up and make sure that we're holding these people in office accountable because they work for the people. But they
Absolutely.
often,
It's just scary to think that somebody could come into power and decide to just be like, well, even if they have a little record, like, if you catch them, send them back, and they don't know these countries, that whatever the country is, not just Latin America, just around the world, they don't know these countries. They didn't grow up there. They feel American more than anything because this is where they grew up, right? This is where they are. They've planted roots here. Some of them don't have family back. So, I think doing a little research, and before I started, I was like, this is the story I want to tell. My mom came over here as an immigrant after dictatorship from the Dominican Republic. And how is it worse now than it was when she came here years ago? How is that possible? So again, it was just for me to start a conversation. And I feel like I'm glad that I did. And I remember the first shot we were going to shoot, my co-director, Diana Zollicoffer, she was like, this is a social justice piece, right? And that's not how I wrote it. It's not why I wrote it. I wrote it because I just wanted to tell the story, because it's, excuse my language, messed up. I was gonna curse, but I'd rather not.
I already did earlier. I think I
yeah, it's like fucked up. It's like, how, it's a fucked up story. So how do I, get, and then, when we shot the first scene, she just was like, yeah, this is social justice, just so you know. And that made me actually, as we shot the rest of it throughout the day, I was like, oh, okay. All right, there's a responsibility here now, I feel.
Mhm.
That's different than I just want to tell the story. It's more of like, not only do I want to tell the story, I want people to really understand a little better. Even if they take one little piece of information with them after this, I've done my job.
Mm-hmm.
Or they talk about it. I've had so many friends on either side of the kind of table, both sides of the table, say, I didn't really get it before. I kind of get it now. I understand better. That was the point. So I did, right?
And that's how art is so powerful. I mean, we can stand on a hilltop and scream out about these injustices, but I feel like as humans, art is that way we can humanize a situation that seems very abstract to people in the big picture. So it's easy to turn your head away and say, like, that doesn't affect me, or I don't care. But you watch a film or you read it and you see like this person who is just like you, and you see what they're going through, and you can put yourself in their shoes and have some empathy. I think that really, that's why I think art is so powerful. And it's
yeah,
just power to, yeah.
I mean, I agree. I agree. I don't, and I think that, again, I'll use Prince as an example, working with him, because he used his platform in so many ways to bring light to different things. And he was, a genius in so many ways too. Again, I just think being exposed to having the opportunity, and I'm so grateful for that, to work with people like that and see it and see how they use their art for that. Definitely, I think planted a seed in me. Like, if I ever get that opportunity, I want to do the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
So, I kind of created the opportunity for myself.
Awesome.
Yeah, but I feel like we all have the same opportunity. We just have to, do it. I'm at the point now where I'm like, I don't want to talk about it too much. I just want to do it, so. Yeah.
I think that's a good place to be. It's how shit gets done. So I wanted to dive in a little bit. So go into the pre-production process. So you have the idea, now you're sitting down to write this woman's story. How did that particular story come to you, and what was the process like of writing the film?
So a few years ago, I had wrote a story, like, again, based on my mom coming to New York City, and just what that process for her was like, being an immigrant coming out of a dictatorship, like what that was going to be like. And then, again, previous administration, and just what they were trying to spin immigrants were, especially from Latin America, that hit home for me. because it was so inaccurate, that I was like, okay. And then I was getting these silly auditions. I was like, yeah, I got to change this narrative. Like this, I just got to change. Something was just like, I got to change this narrative. This isn't accurate. This is wrong. Like, how do I do this? So I just took that script that I had from my mom's story and started researching some of the dreamer stories currently, or at the time, were happening, which was like 2018, 2019 at the time. And so I started pulling up stories of dreamers, and some that were getting deported, some that were being detained. I think that was around the same time that video came out of those kids that were being separated from their parents at the border. And there was that security guard that was like making fun of them when they were crying. Remember, they were like crying, and all you heard was the audio of him like laughing at the fact that these babies were like crying because they weren't with their parents at the border facility. And I just was like, I got to write this. So it was a mesh of what was happening at the time, and then like my mother's story too, a little bit. And then I just kind of made it modern day. So at that point, again, I was still in a class at UCLA Extension. They were kind of helping me from the production standpoint, like pre-production stuff, what needed to happen, like do a staging. We're in a class, like you're going to need insurance. You're going to need this, you're going to need that. You're going to need a permit. And that was just, that whole process was like, I don't know how. I look back and I'm like, how did I make that happen in like a week? I don't even know.
Was
like,
it a week?
I mean,
I wanted to ask you, like, how long did you go from idea to?
From idea to actually shooting, that was like a couple months. Like I'm gonna say like 6 months maybe, but like I mean actually like permit, location, like it was like it was like in 2 weeks, it was like all crew, like it was all just kind of in like 2, maybe 3 weeks is a long time, but I would say like 2-week process. I just kind of pulled it all together. And it might be, maybe I'm indulging in that a little bit, but I feel like it was pretty quick, because once I found out, because I needed to lock in a date at the location, I needed to go to the permit office. And even though, one thing I learned, at least here in Los Angeles, like depending on where you shoot, like each city like has their own permit thing. So like even though you're on a set, you still might need a permit. And they're like, well, we just want to make sure you don't have explosions. I was like, I don't even have a budget for matches. You know what I mean? Like, let alone a full explosive crew. Oh, wow. Like, and they were like, yeah, you still need a permit. I'm like, but I'm a student, you know, because I was at UCLA Extension, and they were like, yeah, no, still need a permit. So even on a location, in a location house, you still need a permit.
Okay, I want to ask where, like you obviously didn't film at the actual airport. It was on a set.
Yes.
Yeah, can you imagine? Like, I want to film.
And I've gotten that before. They're like, how did you make it look like an airport? And that's where I'm like, my set designer, Shoshana, and then my DP, Maricela, those were the two that they did the magic. You know, it was all about how they were shooting it, what angles they were like, and what they put in the back. That was movie magic. That was a lot of movie magic going on there. And thing.
Film. I had a friend who was working on a film set, and I like special effects and stuff, but I love when people can do something like practical and just use the camera or use props to create an effect. And I remember they broke a wine glass and they attached it to the front of the camera so that it would create this sort of like distorted effect through I don't know, I thought that was really cool. So
yeah, I mean,
I think what they do is it's definitely out of my realm of talent. So I'm just in awe of people who can make that kind of magic.
I think when it's indie filmmaking, I think you just make the best of it. And if that means like, you know, my set designer, Shashank, she like, you know, there's a scene where there's a judge, and so he has to have the seal behind him. And she was like, no, I could just go to Staples and print it up. I was like, you sure? Like, and on camera, it just looks like a real seal in a courtroom. Like it just, but it's literally just, I'm giving this away, but a piece of paper stuck to the black.
That's what we want to hear. We're getting like the real behind the scenes look at how we make things look real on camera.
A lot of things. I built the TSA uniforms. Like I had them. I knew everybody's sizes, but I built the shirts. So I still have them. But I found somebody that was selling TSA patches. Maybe I don't even know if this is legal, but it was on eBay. And so I found the TSA patches that is on their shirts. Somebody was selling them on eBay. I was like, I only need 2. So, and I researched, it's all those little, like, but I'm a kind of a perfectionist that way. And where I like research things, like I want it to look like I couldn't find a place to rent them. Not a lot of places rented them. So I had to build my own. Right. So the pants, I had to rent their belts, their utility belts, like the camera, that scanner that's there when you get through an airport, that little scanner. Like
that's why I thought you were at a real airport at first. Like I knew you probably weren't, but it looks so real.
And that was right again, that's just like I really weighed on Shoshana, my set designer, and Maricela, who's my DP. And the lighting, I weighed on them. And I was like, I trust you guys. Like I'm just here and I'm just gonna say my lines. That's it, because at one point, again, right before we were shooting, like my co-director had to like really kind of be like, okay, you can let go now, and it's just little things like that I was like, okay, like I have to put my other hat on now and just because
I wanted to ask you how was that? I mean, like you're directing it, co-directing it, and you're also starring in it. So how, like, was it difficult for you to be both in front of the camera and behind, or did having Diana there help balance that out?
Having Diana there helped a lot. She was my eyes at that point, and I just trusted that because we had kind of developed some other stuff in the past. So I trusted that I knew she knew what needed to get done and what I needed and what my vision was. So looking back on it now, I go, yeah, I could have maybe looked back at some of the playback and I could have, whatever to see, because since I chose to go first, I was messing up a lot of my lines because my head was 8 million different places, but we eventually got it. But having her there definitely helped. Having her as a co-director, yeah, that's why she's the co-director because, she knew what she was doing. I was confident. The camera crew knew what they were doing. I was confident in them. I just trusted at that point. I just trusted it. I was like, well, we're here now. And we had 12 hours to shoot. I only booked the location for 12 hours.
Oh, wow. So you shot the entire short film in 12 hours. That's incredible.
Yes.
I believe it's 8 minutes long, right?
Correct.
So I don't know if people, obviously people who make film will know this, but 8 minutes of film, like if you were shooting a feature length film, like that's a lot to get done in 12 hours.
Yeah. And again, this is where, when I look back on my dance career, I go, well, I don't know how many music video sets I was on that we would shoot a whole music video in a day. Some of them would take 2 or 3 days, right? Depending on how kind of intricate they were with costuming or other elements, staging and stuff like that, locations. But for the most part, knowing that, you could shoot a 3-minute video in a day, it'd be a long day, but you could do it. It was possible. That's how I went into it. Again, I feel like my dance career, working as a music video dancer, like all these things were just kind of in my arsenal. And I knew like, it's possible. It's possible. You just have to be super like clear on what you need to get done. And if you have a crew that knows, like, yeah, you can shoot this scene in an hour, you can shoot this scene in a half hour. This will just be a swipe. We can just swipe through that. That's fine. Like, you might have to let go of this shot. There was a few things we didn't get to shoot. Like I wanted a shot of our lead actor, Lily's character, which is the character I play they also had a jail cell. So I wanted her in the jail cell as well. We didn't get it. We just, that's fine. I didn't need it. Looking back on it, I'm like, well, I didn't really need it, So those are just like little things like that. But yeah, I was lucky enough to find a location that had all of those sets in one place.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really cool. Do you have like I was gonna ask you if you have like a favorite memory from being on set, but I also want to know like what the biggest challenge you faced while filming.
While filming or
or do you have like a favorite part of the process that, I mean, you're wearing so many different hats in this film. Like, is there one that stands out to you that you just really enjoyed?
I really think once I was on set, once Diana turned to me and was like, you can let go now. Like at some point, you're gonna have to let the reins go. And I could kind of breathe through that and just kind of coast at that point, because I felt like anything and everything that needed to get done up until that point was now done. There's nothing I could do. If lunch didn't show up, I mean, not that I would always feed my crew, but just as an example, if we didn't get that one light or that one camera lens or whatever, like at that point, it was like, look, we're just gonna have to do with what we got at this point. And so that felt like the relief. But really, once it was done, all the equipment was delivered back, and we wrapped everything, and we felt like we had everything in the can. I think that was the moment I was like, oh my God, we did it. We did it. And I think even like getting into Cannes it's still like we're still living those moments, because it's like I also got into Bentonville. The same day I found out about Cannes was the same day I found out about Bentonville Film Festival, which is Gina Davis's film festival.
Okay, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's in Arkansas. And my co-director Diana was like, do you know how long I've been trying to get into Bentonville? I've been trying for 6 years.
Wow.
Years. And I'm like, well, we're going with Dreamer. So
I think there's a few other festivals that it was involved in as well. The Barrymore Film Center Short Film Festival, the Philadelphia Latino Film Festival, Rhode Island International Film Festival. I mean, what was the process of getting, like, obviously you can go on the website and you apply, but is there like you just submit your film and see what happens, or is there
the New York Latino Film Festival, I think, was one of the first Latino film festivals to bring us on board too. And those are like connected to like HBO Max. So, just they're all pretty, great film festivals, prestigious film festivals. You just go onto website, you submit your film. And I think just reading through some of the festivals, because some of them might not match. Some of them might just be like, we're only looking for political films, or we're only looking for films surrounding LGBTQ, or so there's sometimes little mandates that they put in their notes. So you want to make sure you're submitting to the right stuff. And I have submitted to some of the bigger ones that I didn't get accepted to, but then I get accepted to Cannes. So I'm like, well, I'm okay with that,
I'm so excited. I do have a few other questions about post-production that I want to ask, but let's talk, now that we're on the topic of Cannes, let's just talk about that. Exciting. So you're leaving this weekend to go, and I think you were telling me that it's going to be premiering on the 12th, which when this airs, it's going to be the 12th. I think, how else does that work? I think you were telling me that they also show the short films in between the bigger films.
So we got accepted into the Diversity in Cannes portion of the Cannes Film Festival. They are the only kind of accredited and accepted other kind of event, so to speak, that is still a part of the Cannes Film Festival, that actually coincides with the film festival and is a part of it, because they also support diversity. So Diversity Day, they have a whole Diversity Day, which is on the 12th. So that's when it'll be showing and screening. But actually what they'll do is they'll take all the films, and they usually have another theater in the Palais that they screen them at as well. I think I'm saying this correctly. So as people are in between screenings or whatever, they have a whole other theater that shows all the diversity films as well. And that'll be throughout the festival, from my understanding. And this year, which is really, I'm excited as a New Yorker, Spike Lee is the jury president. So that's just like, it's just like
Spike Lee.
I hope so. I mean, I've met him before. He's super nice. I've met him before, but it's just like, it's so like kind of coincidental and like kind of synchronistic, that he just happens to be the jury president, this year, the 1 year. It's again, after a year of digital film festivals, it's the first festival I'm actually able to go to in person. And it just happens to be Cannes.
That's incredible. I'm going to be living vicariously through you. So I hope you're going to be posting lots of pictures on Instagram.
Yeah, I think we take over. So Dreamer takes over the Diversity in Cannes page on Instagram on the 13th. So the day after Diversity Day, Dreamer will just take over their IG page. And so we're doing a social media takeover that day. So believe me, I've been to Cannes before. Ironically enough, they have the best pizza. I don't know why. I think it's because they're so close to Naples. They have the best pizza in Cannes. Like, so good. Pizza and rosé. So talk about diet. Like,
Whatever. What happens in Cannes stays in Cannes, including calories.
exactly.
Yeah, so going back to the whole production process, and so you finished, you wrapped up, and then now you're in post-production. And what is the what process did you go through to like editing? Like who was involved? Like how did that, were you really involved in the editing process, or did you sort of hire that out?
I did hire that out, but that also came through one of the, I think it came through my DP, it might have, or if it didn't come through the DP, and Maricela, it came through Diana, my co-director. That's the first kind of editor that I had. And I usually am pretty clear on the pacing of it. And so sharing the script with the editor and having them kind of read it. About 85 to 90% of my crew was female. So including the editor, even in post, I kind of made it a point that I wanted it to be diverse and female. And so, and nothing against the guys by any means, but, and diversity, I also include LGBTQ+. So for me, the editor, I was pretty clear on the story and the pacing. Again, when it comes to pacing, because I worked in music videos for so long, there's something about timing for me, that it needs to flow a certain way. So I had that, and then I needed some other things that editor, I just needed another eye. I needed another, so we hired another editor, Sabrina Scow, and she kind of like put the finishing touches on the edit. And that kind of really brought it home for me. So I just because I was very clear on what I wanted to do from a storytelling perspective and how I wanted it to flow. And then I used enhanced media for the sounds, different sounds and different things. Like, so you hear people in the airport, so to speak. That wasn't us, that was post. That was, sound design, my feet walking, things like that, just a dog barking, whatever. I don't even know if there's a dog barking, but whatever.
Yeah, but these are like the little details that people just don't realize. Like it's the tiniest details that go into making a film and making it feel realistic.
Yeah. And I even watch it now and always see something else that I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize I was there. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that does, if I didn't, because I've seen it so many times without any certain sounds put in. And then when the sound design came in and they added those things, I was like, it does really make a difference. And again, this was my first kind of time as like a filmmaker, actually making a film, not like a music video, because music videos are different. You just slap music on it and there you go. This was like actually listening. So there were other things, mistakes that I made that I was like, oh, I'd change that next time, sound wise. Things I heard that I was like, oh, you just have to be aware of. But yeah, I mean, and then, but I didn't do an edit right away. I sat on it for a while because I just was like, it's like I gave birth is what it felt like. I've never had children, so I'm just.
No, but it really, I have had children, and I can tell you, like, putting a piece of art into the world and making it really is, it's like every emotion at once. It's painful, it's awe-inspiring, it's like mundane, it's everything all into one. So that's how I felt when I put my book out and published my first book. So
and it just I was like, I don't want to look at anything for like a few months. I just was like, I just don't want to. I'm exhausted. Like, I was like, I'm exhausted. And then finally, when I started realizing like, okay, time is passing and I need to like, all right, time to start putting this together. It's like, I needed to work up to it again. And it took a good 6 months post, I think, just about to actually get an edit that I liked and that was pretty concise and getting notes from like Diana or the DP, or hey, you should color it, because coloring is a whole other thing too, which I was like, oh, I forgot about that, you know, and they're like, don't forget to get it colored. And I was like, oh, I gotta get it colored too. Like, you know, it was like, I was like, oh man, that too. Like, what else do I got to do? You know, it was like one thing after kind of the other, like, don't forget to do this, you know, and you need to sync it to this. And I was like, you know, so there's a lot that was like going on. And then I used actors, some union actors. So that was a whole other thing, is dealing with the union through that and making sure. First, I wanted to use a kid in one of the scenes, and they were like, well, you have to have a tutor. I was like, oh man. I was like, well, no kid. Like, I just, no kid in this one.
Like, we can make the story without that.
Yeah, I have to say, even though I want, but well. And so I think also knowing like stock footage, like knowing that I relied on some of this for stock footage helped too, because we wanted to shoot, I think the opening shot is, you know, a plane flies over a fence. And we actually, the DP and I went to a Burbank airport, and we were like, where could we outside somewhere, not in the airport, but somewhere outside, could we shoot this? And we looked and we're like, oh, well, we're gonna have to get into the parking lot and like actually set a camera up. So we'll probably need a permit, or we could try to shoot it outside of the airport down the street somewhere, but that wasn't really the shot we wanted. And I just started looking at stock footage, and I was like, I found it, you know, and it works. So
I've always wondered about stock footage. Because when you're making a film, you have such a distinct, like you have your own vision and voice, and however you want to make the film and how it looks. So I've always kind of wondered, like, how do you find stock footage that fits in with the look that you're going for? Like, was it hard to find exactly the right?
So again,
or
getting feedback from my DP is what worked. And then her telling me, make sure it's, I think it was like 4K, like make sure it's 4K. That's what we're shooting. We're shooting 4K. So it would match, right? And then stylistically, if you've ever seen the movie Maria Full of Grace, that was the style we were going for. And so because that was the style, that was already the type of stock footage I was looking for, as long as it fit that style, like I already knew. And before I bought it, you know, you can download a sample. So I would send it to my DP. Hey, what do you think of this one? You think this would work? Yeah, that goes with the story. Or no, maybe try to find something a little more, whatever. So even like the little girl, there's a little girl like laying there at like a, you know, detention center or whatever on the floor, you know, on a cardboard box. Again, I found that stock, and that just kind of fit the motif. So yeah. And then I think Reagan's speech, we used Reagan's speech, and I try to ask a few friends that have worked in politics. I was like, can I use this speech? They're like, it's a public speech, you can use it. I was like, perfect. I was like, okay, you know, just pull it. I was like, all right, great. So that helped. Yeah, so that was maybe like the only thing out of like the footage that didn't stylistically fit, because it was like a presidential speech. But yeah.
Awesome. So out of the entire process, what was the biggest challenge that you faced? I feel like I really drew that question out. I was trying to remember what I wanted to say.
What was the biggest challenge? You know, honestly, I think it was just like, I mean, it could be a few things, right? Because it was like I said, like, oh, well, okay, great. All right, we got the location. Okay, we put the down payment on the location. Well, you need to get a permit. What? Why do I need to get a permit? I'm not shooting outside, like I'm shooting on a location. And it was like, well, the city of Burbank has certain, you know, and you have to just comply with the city, whatever city you're in. Again, Los Angeles, there's like a city every 10 blocks. Like, you know,
everywhere. Like I remember when I was doing a short film back in the day, and I was in Ottawa, Canada, and I remember having to contact the board and get permits for filming, because we were filming outside. And that surprised, that I didn't know though, that I'm surprised by needing a permit for shooting in like an actual film set.
They needed the letter from the school to prove that I was a student, but I had my student ID, but then like I needed to contact the student office that could give me that letter. So it was like, and it was like literally coming down crunch time. I was like, I'm shooting Saturday, it's Wednesday. You know what I mean? It was like that kind of thing. And then the permit office was closed at like 2 p.m. So I had to go back the next day at like 8 a.m. You know, it's just like that kind of stuff, which wasn't
It's all the red tape.
It's like red tape, and also just kind of like, it was always like, okay, and now you also, if you're gonna rent this, remember you need this insurance and this type of insurance, but you can't get that type of insurance unless you're working with a certain type of production company. And I was like, oh man, like I was like, how am I gonna, you know what I mean? So working with like, different producers, different people that knew, how to kind of maneuver that helped. But if I didn't, I would have been like, I don't think I can get this done. You know what I mean? So I think and the school too, UCLA helped with that a lot too. Like, this is how you do it. This is how you get this insurance. This is how you, get these permits. So that helped. But I think being aware of that is the big thing, because you don't want to get fined. You don't, you never know when you want to shoot again later, and you want to make sure you build those relationships, because I think that's part of it too. You're built, like, if I might shoot in Burbank again one day. I might need to go back to that office one day and work with them again. So you never want to, piss anybody off.
I want to burn the bridges, because I was going to say, if you do something the wrong way, quote unquote, can that come back to bite you in the butt? Like when you're trying to get your film into film festivals, or when you're, want to show your film or sell your film, like, can they come back on you and be like, well, we don't have it on record that you have a permit for this special place, but we see you filmed here? Like,
possibly, who knows, right? Like, somebody
I don't know any of that stuff.
But you just want to be the best kind of filmmaker you can in that sense. And again, believe me, I've done a lot of guerrilla filmmaking where I'm just running around the streets shooting, not putting a tripod down, which maybe I shouldn't be saying that. But that's why I just think it's important, if you're really kind of really going to take filmmaking seriously, then take it as not only an art form, but as the business seriously. If you want to work with an actor who's a union actor, go through the union. Like, just do what you need to do. If that's who's going to tell your story and bring it home for you, then that's worth it, right? Like, that's how I look at it. I don't know.
I agree 100%. So as we wrap this up, I want to ask, do you have any last pieces of advice for someone going out there and wanting to make their own short film?
I just say go for it. I say, sit down, really research, depending on what the topic is, your story, and use the power of social media to get the story out. Use the power of film festivals. You don't always have to get into the bigger film festivals to make an impact. It's actually been some of the smaller ones that I've been able to meet other filmmakers. I've been able to get the story out because I've got them into the smaller film festivals. It got me into another film festival. So you just never know, like, whatever. It's just, if you want to shoot a short story and you want to make, whether that's an impact, or you want to just tell a story because you're a storyteller, I say just go for it. Don't let anything really hold you back, but just understand it's a process. You know what I mean? Depending on the type of story you want to tell or how you want to tell it. So yeah, I would say that for sure. And don't be intimidated by anything. I think, yes, diverse stories. I'm going to kind of play into that a little bit. Diverse stories, female-led stories, LGBTQ plus, whatever, whatever the background is, doesn't matter. Like, I just say, tell the story, because I think we need more of those stories out there. I think, again, me growing up and not seeing someone that looked like me too much on television or in film now is important for me to tell that story, because I want to tell that story. I want more people to see my side, my angle. Everybody has an angle. Everybody has a story. It doesn't matter, whatever. It's just, everybody has their own story and their own angle. So I say, go for it. Don't let anything hold you back.
I love that. I'm so excited that you agreed to sit down and chat with me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kate, for having me. I'm excited.
Okay, and so this, like I said before, this will be premiering on the 12th. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching, and thank you, and good luck in Cannes. I can't wait to hear all about it.
Oh, you'll hear all about it for sure.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye everyone.